Good morning, Colorado. You are listening to the Daily Sun Up. It's a conversation with the Colorado Sun. I'm team editor David Krause. Before we jump into today's conversation, here is a quick message from our sponsor.
Support comes from Credit Union of Colorado, proud to call Colorado home for more than 90 years. They are a local institution with a track record of showing up for the community and putting people first. Credit Union of Colorado. Honestly good. Learn more at honestlygood.org. Energy Outreach Colorado is a statewide nonprofit helping income-qualified Coloradans pay their energy bills. They support hardworking families facing tough choices between paying utilities and buying essentials like food. Learn how Energy Outreach Colorado is creating affordable energy solutions for Coloradans at energyoutreach.org. Set the summer trend. Electrify your lawn equipment and help reduce harmful ground-level ozone in your Front Range community. Learn more at simplestepsbetterair.org.
Now, back to the show. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Colorado wildfires continue to burn across the state, and many of the fires are in areas that during the summer are used by ranchers and cattle operations to graze herds. But when fast-moving fires push toward those areas, plenty of fast thinking goes into trying to save the livestock. I'm here with Sun rural reporter Tracy Ross, who along with a few other Sun reporters this week has been talking to ranchers affected by the fires about how they evacuated and really what they might see and what might be in store after they return and survey the damage. Hey there, Tracy Ross.
Hey, Dave. How you doing?
Doing great, Trace. Thanks. Let's chat a little bit about how and tell our listeners how we kind of came to this story and the process. I know a lot of times listeners like to understand the process of how we decide on stories. Give a little bit of background on how we came to this decision and the fires that we picked.
Yeah. So as you know, we have, and listeners might be interested in this, but basically we have our weekly meetings and we always kind of try to figure out, okay, like what are the biggest issues of the week? And obviously fires are dominating all of our coverage, especially now that the primaries are over. And so at the Sun, we don't want to always just do the breaking news. We don't want to always just do there's a fire here, there's a fire there that's blowing up, this, that. We really try to get into, as you said, like talking to the people. The people are what matter to us in this state. And so we collectively decided that we would look into two of the biggest fires, which are the Aspen Acres fire and the Ferris fire, and try to talk to some producers there because we'd been hearing that they were having some real challenges, but also some like real successes because of the coordination and help between agencies and organizations and the ranchers themselves. Not all of these people were ranchers in the traditional sense. There were some hobby farmers. There was a donkey livestock person. We talked to people with dogs, all kinds of animals. But yeah, so we focused on the Aspen Acres fire, which let's just very quickly recap. It is 10 miles northwest of Rye in Custer and Pueblo counties. Right now, we last reported it was around 96,000 acres and 15% contained. And then the Ferris fire is all the way down south and west in San Juan National Forest near Montezuma, in Montezuma and Dolores counties north of Cortez. That one we last reported was just over 57,000 acres and 19% contained. So that's kind of the setup. Like we looked at the biggest fires in the state and we wanted to kind of look at, okay, we were constrained by where the fires were, obviously, but it was interesting and we were able to talk to ranchers and producers out on the Eastern Plains and also ones out on the West Slope who were having definitely different situations going on with their livestock.
Tracy, what are some of the challenges that ranchers and cattle operations are facing when it comes to wildfires?
Yep. So that's the big question that we explored. And like I said a minute ago, it's different in different parts of the state. And so, like I said, we have a big fire, the Aspen Acres fire burning out in Pueblo County, which is east. And then we have the Ferris Fire burning down in the San Juan National Forest, which is in Dolores County, which is very far south and west. And Dolores County actually borders Utah. So basically, what is happening, sort of as a general rule, is that as these ranchers have moved herds, they've done a lot of it on horseback. They've done some of it with vehicles. And in many cases, they've done it with the help of friends, which is kind of the cool part of this story. But they're basically like pushing cows away from flames as they move close. They've stayed up all hours of the night trying to figure out what to do next. A lot of them are feeling like complete uncertainty about when the flames will fan out. We don't really know. And the sad part is that the losses really have been mounting, threatening the health of herds and the future of some of the ranches that have been passed down for generations. The immediate casualties have left a lot of ranchers devastated. There have been animals killed, buildings and fences turned to rubble, land scorched, covered in ash, and cows with long-lasting health impacts like burned respiratory systems, and then thousands of acres of grazing land that's been lost, which could force already drought-stressed ranchers to sell off their cattle. So this is a big issue, and I don't know, I know you're in the Boulder area, Boulder County. I'm up in Nederland, and this smoke dome that we have been in has just been crazy. And so the reason I bring that up is because it just tells you like the severity of these fires, right? If there's so much smoke that I can't breathe where I live, and I'm pretty far away from any fire, we know that these fires are having tremendous impact on people. And so we really wanted to dig in and find out like what exactly was happening with them.
Tracy, let's focus a little bit more on the Aspen Acres fire. Like you mentioned, more than 96,000 acres burned so far this year. We mention a lot about acres and containments, but we don't really talk too much about the animals that are being sheltered at the state fairgrounds or kind of keep track of those kind of numbers. You reporters found out that there was a lot of coordination among state's biggest ag agencies and the Colorado Department of Agriculture. Give us a little more insight on some of the back workings with those groups.
Sure. So this is a really cool story. Basically, what happened, and I just want to say that this reporting came from Erin Carney-Spar, who is the executive vice president of the Colorado Cattlemen's Association. We talked to people from the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union. We talked to people from the Colorado Department of Agriculture, and kind of to put together this puzzle of, we knew that there were a lot of larger and really small, kind of the focus was on smaller operations out in Pueblo County in that area. And a lot of those places, they were characterized to me as hobby farms. And one of the things that Erin from Cattlemen's told me is that some of the people out there who have these hobby farms, they don't have vehicles to move their animals around, because it's not like, you're moving a bunch of cattle from the feedlot to, the sale barn or whatever. And so this was a really big problem. And, very quickly through all of these organizations, because they work so closely together, Cattlemen's Association learned that there was a big need for help to get these animals out of these places fast. And also the other big thing that's going on is, obviously, if you move animals off of their grazing lands, and in this case onto the Colorado State Fairgrounds in Pueblo, they need to eat. And so, another factor in this whole story is hay. And we're in such a massive drought that hay is a huge issue. And I talked to several ranchers across the state for this story who gave me different scenarios, because hay varies in price so much from place to place. But, down in Park County, I was hearing that a bale of hay that normally goes for $13 is going for $20. So hay is a big deal, but these animals needed to eat. And so this really cool coordination happened when someone from Rocky Mountain Farmers Union started making calls to figure out where to get hay to get to these animals. And this was Sarah Mayer. She texted Dan Friesen, who's the emergency coordinator for Colorado Department of Agriculture, who got a hold of brand commissioner Todd Ingley, who talked to the Colorado Cattlemen's Association, who activated this kind of phone tree. And basically, through all of this coordination, they were able to get, bales and bales of hay out to the fairgrounds for these animals. And so it just shows the resilience of Coloradans for one thing, and really the ranching community and the agriculture community for another, because without that coordination and that help, given the dire straits that we are in with hay already, who knows what those animals would have eaten, even though they got them out of these fires. That was still a big piece. And so that was kind of a cool part of this whole story with the Aspen Acres fire specifically.
Tracy, you and I have covered dozens of wildfires through the years. I always find interest, kind of like what you mentioned at the beginning, in the stories of the people and the resiliency and the coming together of communities on just such short notice. I've always been impressed by that. How has that really played out here? Give us a little bit more of that. I love the phone tree story. I just think that really gets to the heart of how Coloradoans and people across the West really deal with wildfires.
Yeah, I mean, and that I think is such a Western quality. And I'm sure it's easy for me to say because I grew up in the West. So I'm not discounting the East. I'm sure people in any emergency situation mobilize, forget differences, really I don't know. I think having a shared goal, whether it's tragic or whether it's something really great, really makes people focus on the task at hand and not anything that's happened in the past or any grievances they have with each other. People just really rally around one another to help. And I think this is something that maybe if you're not familiar with the agriculture community in Colorado, it seems really spread out. You've got these ranches, in Grand County where there's so much land and these big, huge cattle operations that, well, not big compared to feedlots, but big operations on these massive allotments. And you think oh, the people don't really, they're isolated or they're, rugged individualists and they don't talk, which is completely untrue. I find these communities are very, very tight knit. And I think that's what we saw with these fires, just people coming together out of the best of their hearts to help one another.
Tracy, the Ferris fire, as you mentioned, burning in far southwestern Colorado, up to almost 60,000 acres. You reported there is a part in the burn area called the Glade, which is where several ranchers in the summertime have Forest Service allotments. Talk about, Tracy, the Glade and what it means to have cattle up there and what they are concerned about going back to.
Yeah, so this is super cool too, because I feel like, I don't know, I've lived in Colorado for, 25 years more now and have spent a lot of time in the outdoors, but obviously not all over the place because it's such a big state. And I really had no idea about the San Juans, except driving through, to go to different places. And hearing about this 165,000 acre plateau above the Dolores River with these deep canyons cutting through it, just this beautiful sounding place. It just blew me away thinking about it, for one thing. And then finding out through Lorena Williams, who's the public information officer for the San Juan National Forest, that there are 7 permittees, so livestock, cattle ranchers who graze their livestock in the summer on these National Forest Service allotments. And they have a total number of cattle. So they have 2,300 cow-calf pairs, which is a lot of cow, right? And the interesting thing to me is, in my mind, when I heard that these fires were blowing up down there, I was just envisioning cattle running loose all over and complete mayhem and tragedy after tragedy. And then in reality, when I talked to Lorena, she said that they're still up there. So even though this fire is burning, these permittees are keeping their cattle up there. And that, again, comes through massive coordination with the Forest Service, with the range technician, with the ranchers themselves, working really, really hard to create fire line and sort of like, not stop the fire, but sort of protect this area on the southern flank of the fire so that these animals can stay there. And there's also a bunch of elk and a bunch of deer that are in that area. So they worked really, really hard to contain the fire and so that the animals can stay there. And she told me that, I think we have a picture at the beginning of our story where these cows are just walking through this green smoke and it looks horrible. And she said, well, it's not that bad actually, because the cows can find places to forage and they a lot of times seem kind of unfazed by what's happening. They're just eating along. And that is because fires do not work in the way that a lot of us imagine them, including myself, with this big conflagration and it's like everything's going to hell all at once. Fires burn in mosaic patterns. Some fires burn hotter than others. If the wind blows, a fire can move through an area really fast. And so what she told me is that even now, some of the cows that were protected in this southern area have now been pushed into what she called the cold back of the fire, where the fire passes through and the ground cools. And what's super interesting is as soon as that ground starts to cool and the fire moves past, the greenest, tenderest, yummiest grass starts growing because there's so much nitrogen. And so the animals come pretty quickly back to that area and they're able to graze there. And she said that also happens with the elk herd and the deer herd too. It's not like they disperse and they're gone. It's like they disperse to safety. They wait it out and then they come back. So I thought that was really super fascinating.
Tracy, you mentioned you've talked to a few ranchers. I know Parker and Erica did as well. How are they doing? What are they feeling?
I would say in short, there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of sadness for ones who've lost cattle. And there's hope for people like the ranchers down on the Ferris fire who've been able to kind of manage the cattle as the fires burn. But obviously this is far from over. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed and hope the best for the ranchers all over.
I'm sure we'll be following up with this story after the fire is finally put out, both in Pueblo County as well as down in southwestern Colorado and across the state. Always interesting to hear those stories and see people rebuild. So I know we'll be bringing those stories to you. If you haven't read Tracy's feature on the ranchers and livestock during wildfire, you can check that out on our homepage and on our free Colorado Sun app. And I always like to say, we know you guys have options on listening. So thanks so much for tuning in to the Daily Sun Up today and for supporting the Sun. Tracy Ross, appreciate you, all the work you're doing, and let's keep writing some great stories.
Sounds good, Dave. Stay safe.
Thanks for listening. And finally, here are a few stories that you should know about today.
Apple is coming to Fort Collins in a big way. The company's $1.5 billion manufacturing deal with chipmaker Broadcom announced Wednesday will benefit the Fort Collins facility where it has operated a semiconductor plant for years. Apple said the investment could lead to hundreds of new jobs in the area. As Waymo's driverless vehicles move closer to offering Denverites a ride without a human driver, the company said its next phase is beginning. Rides for its employees. The employee-only trips are the precursor to opening the service to the public, but a Waymo spokesperson wouldn't give a date, only saying, soon. Moose go back hundreds, possibly thousands of years in Colorado. A study led by University of Colorado archaeologists has reached this surprising conclusion about the state's favorite ungulates. This contradicts the widespread understanding they were introduced here in 1978 and challenges Rocky Mountain National Park's argument for thinning the park's moose herds.
To read these stories and much more, visit our website, coloradosun.com. As an award-winning nonprofit news outlet, we take our mission of credible, independent journalism seriously, and you can check out our trust indicators at coloradosun.com/ethics. Our music is by the Denver-based Matt Skellinger Group. A link to their music is in our show notes. And a special thanks to Swallow Hill Music. I'm David Krause. See you next time.